All right, guys, so let's get ready to roll here. We are continuing with our theme of imperialism around the turn of the century. And the topic that we're going to get into right off the bat here is the Spanish American War. And we're really going to witness the rise of the United States as a world power during this early 1900s era. First, I want us to understand the presidential timeline that we'll be getting into really kind of in today's lecture and beyond, but really around the early turn of the century. We start with William McKinley, who ushers in the 1900s, okay? And next, we're going to get into one of my favorites, Teddy Roosevelt, who's just an amazing character. We're going to get more into Teddy tomorrow when we talk about the progressive era. Succeeding Teddy is William Howard Taft. That is a little bit of a different and difficult succession, and we'll talk about that as well. And then on this front half here, if you will, of time period 7, we'll conclude our presidential timeline for today, just name dropping Woodrow Wilson. Okay, so here are some of the presidents early on in time period 7 that we're going to get into. We're going to start here with McKinley as this sentiment towards war with Spain is building in to the American people's psyche. It starts with Cuba. Well, Cuba and Puerto Rico. Cuba and Puerto Rico is pretty much all that is left of this once great Spanish Empire in the Western Hemisphere. But Cuba is particularly important because a lot of Americans feel like Cuba should actually become a united state, that it should be annexed, that we witness the resistance put forth by the Cuban people over what's seen as kind of despotic Spanish rule. A lot of Americans have value in property and investments there. The geographic proximity makes it such that many Americans feel like this is going to become the next U.S. state. So when McKinley takes office in 1897, he's kind of immediately takes exception to some of the Spanish actions in Cuba, and how Spain is acting in Cuba is portrayed especially negatively by newspapers of the day. Um, and media matters because media, especially as Americans, are really kind of for the first time, right, building that kind of a water cooler culture, like developing this kind of cohesive narrative depending upon what they're reading. And this journalism business is taking off, and America is becoming this nation of consumers. Um, our public opinion is increasingly driven by what is published. And as Cuba's fighting for its independence, there are a couple newspapers in particular that are publishing really kind of brutal accounts of what's taking place in Cuba. And one of the reasons they're doing this, make no mistake about it, because we are in this capitalist era, we're still a capitalist country, right? Is they want to sell newspapers. So it's notable that in a profit motive, these newspapers, the New York Journal and the New York World, are using really cheap paper that over time yellows. So it kind of, these newspapers, these tabloids, if you will, are known as uh, being a part of what we call yellow journalism. But that phrase really comes to be known more for the fact that it's tabloidish, right? That they're publishing exaggerated accounts of what takes place. It is, if you will, fake news, okay? But it's effective in that it really signifies a shift in the larger attitude of Americans. And so in February of 1898, the U.S. battleship Maine is stationed in the port of Havana, Cuba, to protect those American lives and property. And it blows up. Immediately, the Spanish are blamed for like a military or like a terrorist like attack on the battleship Maine. Um, is totally made up because there's no evidence of this whatsoever. But just a few short months later, Congress declares war with Spain. And this is indicative of kind of the zeitgeist of America at this time, as America again is like becoming this, all grown up now nation, this world power, and we're in this era of imperialism and really kind of feeling our oats. I'm going to click on a quick little video here. I'm hoping it records on your video, but if not, I've hyperlinked it here for you, and just 20 seconds or so. Let's check it out. All right.
The United States ran out of destiny to manifest, so they're looking for more. Cuba. Wait, Spain controls Cuba. Well, blame something on them and go to war. What should we blame on Spain? Let's blame the Maine on Spain. So they blame the Maine on Spain. Now we're in business. To celebrate, they kick Panama out of Panama and make a canal, connecting the two oceans. Britain.
All right, so you see, blame the Maine on Spain is a common refrain. There, I rhymed it again. And this is kind of where we are psychologically, I guess, as a nation, right? And we're off to war. Blame the Maine on Spain. And so the Navy sails right into Philippines. They seize the Philippines from Spain. They just absolutely destroy the Spanish fleet. We've got like this badass navy now, and the Spanish Armada is still just that, like centuries behind. We see early success. The same thing in Cuba. Teddy Roosevelt is just a colonel in the army right now, but like a lot of U.S. presidents prior to him and ahead of his time, he gains his fame in through military success. So Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders Brigade gained fame for their charge up San Juan Hill. And we are absolutely rolling in the Spanish American War. I've got another video linked here on this image, and I would like you to watch it. It's a little bit of a different one, but you actually can take notes on this video. Okay. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long. Check that out. Come back to this video here. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that little musical interlude. Now, the Spanish American War ends with, you guessed it, the Treaty of Paris. And the U.S. has won because, hey, that's what we do, right? Um, and they say in the Teller Amendment to the Treaty of Paris that Cuba will control their own government. The U.S. is not going to, in fact, take over Cuba after all. So the United States takes over Cuba, Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines. This is the golden age of American imperialism. One of the key questions, right, is what to do with all these new territories. How do we treat them? How do we organize them politically? And so we want to talk a little bit about that today. We talked about this Teller Amendment, right, that said that Cuba couldn't be annexed by the United States. Puerto Rico had shifted to American control. The Foraker Act had set up kind of a civil government for Puerto Rico. Cuba had gained its independence through American intervention in the Spanish American War. So, yay, we kind of served that purpose, right? The U.S. briefly occupied it, but that was it, right? Now, the U.S. claimed that its right to intervene in Cuba's affairs existed under the Platt Amendment, P-L-A-T-T Amendment, which replaces the Teller Amendment and makes Cuba a protectorate of the United States. So we said, hey, we're leaving Cuba alone, but as I said earlier, we're not really leaving Cuba alone. The Philippines, on the other hand, right, are ceded to the United States as a part of the Treaty of Paris. But there's a lot of opposition to that. We are in this, as I said, this golden age of imperialism, but there's pushback. There is the Anti-Imperialist League, which includes a lot of famous members like Mark Twain, Andrew Carnegie, Grover Cleveland himself. They say that imperialism is immoral. For all those reasons we talked about in class already, that from an economic standpoint, this new access to cheap labor would hurt Americans. And there's a general fear of colonization that, it's going to require military buildup and foreign alliances. Remember, George Washington had warned against permanent foreign entanglements. Okay, but I'm sure that's never going to happen. The United States military is never going to grow too big, right? And by the way, stay out of my politics, you celebrities. So Cuba, of course, is its own nation. How do we have a Navy base there? Well, that's, uh, part of this Teller and Platt Amendment, right? The United States had left Cuba in 1902, but the Platt Amendment said that the United States could intervene at any time we wish to restore peace and order. That we could bar Cuba from foreign treaties which would limit their independence, i.e., aligning with other nations. This is like a super early, like microscopic, telescopic preview, excuse me, of Cold War, right? And that the United States gets Guantanamo Bay. That's obviously been in the news during your lifetime with as not just a naval base, but a holding facility for terror suspects. Okay, so Cuba is still in the picture here from our days of golden age imperialism. Puerto Rico, still a U.S. territory, right? That was 1900 as a result of the Spanish American War, the Foraker Act. Puerto Rico was granted limited popular sovereignty and governmental rule. But there's kind of this confusing Neverland that they are in. As a territory, do their citizens enjoy constitutional rights? The Supreme Court ruled, well, not automatically. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens today. They were granted U.S. citizenship in 1917, March 2 of 1917. So we just passed that deadline. But they don't quite have full representation in our government either. So these U.S. territories are still kind of in, as I said, this kind of political Neverland. The Philippines, the Philippines did not gain independence from America until 1946. The Filipino independence movement had been taking place against Spain in the late 1890s, and Emilio Aguinaldo fought alongside the U.S., thinking that the Philippines would earn their independence as a result of the Treaty of Paris, but it never happened. And for the next nearly 50 years, in fact, the Philippines were no more than this in betwixt U.S. territory. Guam remains a United States island territory to this day. You may recall that Guam was in the news over the past couple of years because North Korea had threatened that they were going to see if they could land a nuclear missile on the island of Guam, which, being a U.S. territory, would have amounted to a declaration of nuclear war on the United States herself. And so, again, there's ramifications that are still with us today from this Spanish American War, from this era of imperialism. One of the most important was access to China. So we talked about the open door policy. The Boxer Rebellion, if you know from world history, was China. I just copied and pasted here from Wiki. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. The Boxer Rebellion was a China's kind of internal response to aggressive, to invasive foreign involvement. But as we could have probably guessed, given all of the evidence we saw in political cartoons, the imperialist powers of the world, the United States included, knew that access to China was far too important, and they actually put down that rebellion from the outside themselves because access to China for economic purposes, right? What's the number unanswered every question ever asked? For economic purposes, is far too important. So the impact of the territorial gains are still with us, right? We know that the United States believed that this economic growth required open markets around the world for its exports, and that we have a right to intervene. whenever we see fit to protect U.S. interests. Um, and while there was some pushback to this, we talked about the Anti-Imperialist League. Um, Imperialism was reaffirmed when McKinley was reelected in 1900. He defeats, by the way, William Jennings Bryan. Again, you will remember William Jennings Bryan, right, was our bimetalist populist party candidate in the previous election. Teddy Roosevelt is McKinley's VP for the election of 1900. And that's going to become important, right? Because we're going to witness soon enough the assassination of McKinley in 1901. And that's how Teddy Roosevelt, the accidental president, as we'll examine him a little bit further, gets put into office. But this impact of territorial gains notion here, right, is that the United States, as you see in this political cartoon, is expanding her wings. This is the eagle with the wingspan that goes over the entire world, 10,000 miles from tip to tip. Um, and that's an impact that we still feel today. It's an impact that was expanded upon further when the United States establishes the Panama Canal. The Panama area, right? This is in Central America, so it's this land bridge between North and South America. Um, and the United States is looking for a place to build an Atlantic Pacific canal, open up trade. We're purely talking economic motives here, right? So the United States actually supports Panama's revolution against Colombia. Primarily, why? Because Colombia won't sell the canal zone to the United States. But we're pretty sure that if Panama becomes an independent country, they will. So, hey, let's help them out. Um, the United States, under Teddy Roosevelt, sends troops to maintain order in Panama. And Panama is recognized as an independent nation. And as predicted, they leased the Panama Canal Zone to the United States in 1904. It's completed in 1914. And you can see the importance here of what that would mean on the map in terms of trade. So if you are exporting goods from Asia, you no longer have to go all the way around the tip of South America to move goods to the U.S. East Coast, or vice versa. European goods no longer need to come into, let's say, New York and then be shipped across the entire continent via train. And they no longer have to go around the tip of South America. They can go right through the Atlantic, through the Panama Canal, and back up the United States West Coast. As you can see here, I've also got another video linked here for you on this image for the Panama Canal and the importance of the Panama Canal and a little bit of the history there. So I would invite you, please, to click on that as well. I've got one more video for you to close with today, and it's a little bit of a wrapping up of our class. So I'll leave you with a 5-minute video here entitled "From Isolation to Empire." Please take notes on this. Take notes on this video as well. As you conclude our class today, you've got 2 videos to watch, and put it in your notes, guys. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much.